So, we have recently been exploring and sharing content on upskilling. And one key component that we want to chat about today is growth mindset. Now, a growth mindset shapes how we perceive and respond to challenges, and it's incredibly valuable for individuals who are engaging in upskilling. So, to dive deeper into this today, I'm joined by Erica, who will share insights into how adopting a growth mindset can transform your approach to professional development and really help you to succeed in today's evolving workplace. Now, Erica is a senior consultant and executive coach at Sigma, and she is also our resident thought leader on all things upskilling. Thank you for joining me today, Erica.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with an easy question. So, what is a growth mindset?
Yeah, so at its core, growth mindset is the belief that skills and somebody's intelligence or intellectual abilities can be changed or developed. So it's a concept that exists on a continuum. So it's not something you either have or don't have. You can have it in varying degrees. Those who tend to be lower in growth mindset, or what we might call a fixed mindset, tend to believe that things like intelligence are predetermined. So they
Mhm.
tend to use language like, I'm not very good at this, versus somebody who has a growth mindset might approach the same situation and say, I need to practice, which kind of highlights the difference between whether or not something can be developed or is more of an innate ability or lack of ability.
Mhm. Okay, so it sounds like a growth mindset can be really helpful in both our personal and professional lives, which
Mhm.
really leads me actually to my next question. So, why is a growth mindset important for upskilling specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, it shapes the perspective that you bring or the approach that you take when it comes to upskilling. It's also a really well-researched concept. So we know from a lot of research and studies that have been done that those who have a growth mindset or who are higher in growth mindset tend to be more agile learners. They tend to look for feedback more often. They embrace stretch assignments, things that are going to help them develop new skills, and they also adapt to change really well. They also tend to demonstrate greater resilience and persistence. So when they're working on something and they encounter difficulties, they're more likely to work through that challenge until they find a solution. They view those setbacks as part of the learning experience, whereas somebody who's lower in a growth mindset might encounter an obstacle and decide it's beyond their capabilities and kind of give up or something. People who are higher in growth mindset also tend to experiment more with new
Mhm.
techniques or new processes so they can kind of enhance innovation on a team. And then, kind of at the individual level, too, there's research to suggest that those who are higher in a growth mindset also tend to report lower levels of stress and burnout related to work. So it's helping in multiple aspects of upskilling, the skill development itself, but then also kind of the mental well-being or the emotional well-being of the worker themselves also.
So, yeah, it seems like it's really important for helping us grow professionally, but also in maintaining our well-being while we're trying to do all these challenging things at work.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah.
really interesting. So,
Mhm.
how can someone actually go about cultivating a growth mindset?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the good news is that there's research that shows, first of all, that it can be developed, and also with relatively short interventions. So they found that after just, participating in a session on growth mindset, they were able to see improvements. So good news is that it can be developed. One of the things that is recommended is often to start to build some awareness about the self-talk that you use, so how you talk about yourself or how you think about yourself. So I mean, I've heard in coaching conversations before people say, I'm not a numbers person. It's just not what I'm good at. Um, it might not come naturally. It might be something that you need to work at. But if you are kind of ending the conversation there of, that's not who I am, I can't do that, that is indicating a bit of a fixed mindset.
Mhm.
You can also have different levels of growth mindset in different domains. So this might resonate with some people in one area, but not another. So paying attention to that talk that you're using, but also the context in which you're using it.
Mhm.
And then looking for stretch opportunities. So looking for ways to develop skills that are not currently in your wheelhouse. And with that, looking for constructive feedback. So people who are lower in growth mindset tend to avoid feedback, or they tend to do what they're comfortable with because,
Mhm.
that's their skill set, that's what they can do. Whereas people who are higher in growth mindset are looking for ways to grow and develop. Um, when it comes to feedback, there's also some research to suggest that if you find a coach or a mentor, that can be really helpful. But especially if that coach or mentor themselves is demonstrating a growth mindset, tends to
Mhm.
have an even greater impact for you as an individual while you're upskilling.
Mhm.
And then the last thing that I would say is to focus on the process, not the
Mhm.
person.
Mhm.
Or another way to look at that would be to highlight effort rather than outcome.
Right.
So, I mean, this is something that we try to do when we talk to our kids, and we say, good problem solving, keep at
Mhm.
it, great effort. You're highlighting the behavior that you want them to continue with rather than saying, you're so smart. Um, Not that you can't tell a child that they're smart, but when you highlight the behavior and the process, it helps to build those skills of problem solving, perseverance, working through challenges. Whereas if you use language that makes it sound like it's an innate ability of the individual, then when they encounter something that is difficult for them or that they can't easily achieve, it can be a bit threatening because now it's interfering with that identity that they've built of themselves as somebody who's smart. If I can't do that, does that mean I'm not smart? No, it
Mhm.
just means it's something new and you need to practice. So that's where I would start with cultivating a growth mindset.
Thank you. Those have been some really helpful tips, especially because I think we've all been in situations where, we tend to shy away from a challenge or we identify ourselves as someone who's not able to do something. So it sounds like really parenting yourself can help you to
Hmm.
cultivate that growth mindset and embrace challenges.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's a skill and a learning in and of itself. It's
Hmm.
something that you kind of want to take steps towards as you're working in that area.
Right. Well, I know that with many things, the way that you cultivate it can sound really simple, but when you're actually trying to enact and cultivate this mindset, it can be a little bit challenging. So, what are some common barriers that you see individuals that encountering in maintaining this growth mindset, especially when they're trying to upskill?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say that you can think about barriers kind of for you as an individual and then
Mhm.
also the context that you're working in. So, as an individual, as I said, if you tend to be lower in a growth mindset, if you tend to believe that these things are innate abilities, I'm either this way or that, and then you put yourself out there, push yourself out of your comfort zone, try to do something, there can be a really strong fear of failure. And the kind of internal consequences that come with that is that it can threaten your self-identity. If you view yourself as an intelligent person or a competent person and you do something and you don't succeed, are you not an intelligent person? No.
Right.
But that can be a really real threat for people.
Mhm.
And then similarly, would be that if you aren't successful, it can activate, stereotype threats. So what are other people going to think of me if I'm not
Mhm.
successful? If I'm, new on a team and I'm trying to do something and I don't do well, that's going to confirm what everybody thinks of me, which is I don't know how to do my job. So
Mhm.
that can be another threat for people when they're kind of trying to learn something new or trying to upskill. And then another one, which is maybe a little bit more niche, but certainly something that we see is people who have perfectionistic tendencies. So, if I can't do it perfectly, why bother trying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not going to apply to everybody, but that is something that people encounter. That is a bit of a barrier when they're trying to develop in those areas. And then if we kind of zoom out and look at the context a little bit more, if you're working in an environment where there's a lack of feedback,
Right.
it's going to be really hard to upskill and to kind of support the development of that growth mindset because inherent in that is, you're trying new things, you need feedback on what's working, what's not working, what can I do differently. So a lack of feedback is a big one. Another one is mixed messaging from leaders. And this usually comes with the best of intention. Leaders want to promote a culture of learning, and they say that that's what they promote. But then when they're either giving feedback or acknowledging success, they focus on the outcome and
Mm-hmm.
they, appreciate flawless execution and they're not acknowledging the effort that somebody put in or, if a project wasn't successful, what did we learn from it? So the
Mm-hmm.
way that leaders approach those situations can have a big impact on the growth mindset of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, yeah, I think it's just about the culture that that organization is putting forward. Are you creating an environment and a safe space for people to experiment and make mistakes? Or is that something that is not supported and is not available to people? That's going to have a big impact on developing growth mindset and upskilling in general in an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like there are strategies that we can use to try to cultivate growth mindset, but it's really interesting because I'm picking up on you saying that the people around us can also influence our mindset, right? Both in our personal and our professional lives. And
Mhm.
your emphasis on leadership and culture, I think, is really important. And this actually leads me perfectly to my last question for you. So, how can leaders who want to encourage their team to adopt this growth mindset, how can they support employees in doing this?
Mhm. So again, the mindset of you as a leader does matter. It's not sufficient. The context also matters, but if you as a leader are working to cultivate a growth mindset or to demonstrate that to your team, that's going to have a big impact. Um, as I said, one of the biggest things leaders can do is create a safe environment for learning. People need to feel that they can have missteps, that they can, go to a colleague when they don't have all the answers, that those things are the norm for the team and that they're not going to be either, criticized or punished in any way
Mm-hmm.
for having that vulnerability of saying this is something I don't know or this is something I'm not good at that I want to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Along those lines, as a leader, you want to model the behaviors that you want to see in your team. If there's something that is a development area for you or a skill gap for you that you're working on as a leader, share that with your team. Share kind of why it's important for you as an individual to grow in that area and what the steps are that you're taking. And that just helps to normalize the process for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, I touched on this already, but as a leader, when you're giving feedback, the way that you give feedback really matters. So, try to replace a generic good job or great work with specific feedback about either an action that that team member took or the deliverable that they executed, something that's more specific about the work or the behavior or the process rather
Mm-hmm.
than just focusing on the outcome. Because if that's how people are being rewarded, so to speak, those are the behaviors that they're going to focus on, not the ones that are the development ones.
Right. Well, thank you, Erica, for all of these super helpful strategies for both individuals themselves as well as for leaders who are trying to support their employees. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We hope that this has been a helpful conversation for you. Now, if you're looking for ideas and guidance on upskilling within your organization, please be sure to connect with Erica on LinkedIn, as she is regularly sharing practical tips on upskilling and on the future of work. Erica is covering core future competencies, so things like digital literacy, continuous learning, analytical thinking, resilience, and also connection. And a connection involves things like communication, collaboration, and empathy. So we are covering a wide range of competencies here. And we'll also introduce other mindsets and tools like growth mindset that can support you in your professional development. Thank you.